Well, hello and happy Friday, Dragon family. Coming from a beautiful Northern Hemisphere spring day. Been outside this morning, doing a few things out there, just loving finally having some warm weather. So coming to you here, I haven't been on since the eclipse, which was last week's live, so it's early in the week, so it feels like it's been a while. But I know there's been a lot of energies moving for everybody, and giving you time to integrate that, feel that squeeze that we talked about on the eclipse, and that things coming to right, the ship righting. And that's been happening since January, early February, late January, when we have the discussion about the movement into the year of the wood dragon, the shift of the planets at the end of January, and really things starting to come into alignment with truth in our lives. So this, what happened with the eclipse is another level of that, a greater level of truth, or really coming into alignment with yourself. So coming into this discussion now, I thought with perfect timing, because there was a great question from Renee, who is part of our dragon family from Canada. And she is new to this journey, as many of you are. I see numbers, I'm flabbergasted actually that we're well over 4,000 for the Love of Dragons group. It's been growing organically for 6-7 years. And that's how I want it to be. It's meant to be an organic finding of each other. And even though a lot of people aren't on Facebook, as many these days, I feel like they're taking a break. It is interesting to see it keep growing and to feel all the new energy coming in who are waking up and going, well, what's this with dragon energy? So Renee's question I loved, because as a beginner, as a newbie, she hears a lot of us discuss or share about merging with our dragon. And I talk about that in terms of the programs that I do with merging into who you be, stepping into who you be, fully merging with your dragon aspect, especially if that is your lineage and that's your true higher self format. And so when we talk about it, because I've been teaching about it for so long, it's a natural thing for me. And I love that she sort of made me step back and go, well, what was that experience like when it started happening? What can I expect as I merge into my dragon? What kind of experiences do people have with that? So I would encourage you guys in the comment section of this video to share your experiences or things that you noticed when you started merging with your dragon, if you're there already, or even if you're in the process. What was one of the first things that happened or that you noticed? That's going to be helpful, because my journey isn't going to look exactly like everybody else's. There will be a lot of similarities and a lot of things that do cross over, but there will be pieces that you guys experience that maybe I don't, or that I do that you don't, as we move into that. So this question takes me back to the very beginning, the first experience of merge that I had. And I've shared this one before. It's also in the foreword of the book, thedragonwithin.com. And I go back to it because it was the first experience, and it's very memorable for me. It was distinctly different than anything I'd experienced before. And so that's definitely something to pay attention to. And I want to share that story, and also things that have happened since then, because the more deeply I merge, things shift and have continued to shift. And what can you expect in that light? So back in 2007, I want to say it was August, because after this experience, it was only about 6 weeks later that I was on a plane to Glastonbury to spend some time in the UK and bring through the book. That's when that all occurred, right after that. And so I was there for a Womb of the World gathering. And this was a group of women. There was a large circle of women. It was being facilitated by a gentleman, but he had a great connection to it. And so when he first met me, he said, oh, you're the one with the dragons. You're going to have a part to play this weekend. And I thought, okay, whatever. Tell me, back then I was very much just there as a participant. I was very skeptical that I had anything to do with anything for the group, being out in front. And so I sort of sarcastically brushed it off. Well, if you get more about that, then let me know. But indeed, by day 3, when we had, I noticed that weekend all kinds of things waking up and opening up for me. When I went in and got my womb name, which I really consider like soul level name, what's the core frequency that is within me or within each of us. And we were able to do an exercise to get connected to that. I couldn't even pronounce it. It was so powerful. I had heard Tana down in my meditation. And when I came out to claim it and announce it to the group, I could only own Tanaya. And so I had introduced myself as, I am Tanaya, I'm here on earth now. And realized many months later, that Tana, which is what I'd actually heard, was my full dragon, and I wasn't ready to own that power. And yet Tanaya was the exact meeting point between Tana and Araya. And it took me months to even see that and put that together. That's how apprehensive or resistant I was to stepping into that power. But on day 3, after a couple of days of being in the energy and really coming into something that was opening within me, we went to do a ceremony at the sacred pool. And it's a large area that's maybe 3 feet deep. And there's a lava rock wall, and the ocean at high tide comes in and washes over the wall and fills it. And I could feel something out in the water. I had for months been taken to my dragon, Tana, down on the bottom of the ocean. I knew now her full name. She's off the coast of Peru. She was on the bottom of the ocean. And I was taken to her for months in my meditations, where I would go and I would sit next to her. And at first I was just next to her eye. And that's like, her eye was as big as me. And there was no movement. And every time that I went, there was just a little more hint of something coming to life, until finally her eye was moving under the lid, and then the lid opened, and then some deeper communication happened. Well, then I happened to be in Hawaii for this retreat, and I felt that same energy. I recognized it. I felt her come into the sacred pool and knew that it was time for me to go in. And that for me, and this will not happen for everyone, but for me, it was a very tangible, almost thrashing about in the water. There was this experience happening with the energy where I literally felt myself writhing around in the water in about 3 feet deep. I'm really glad I didn't cut myself on coral or anything, but I could feel her fully merge into me. And it was very uncanny, because here I am, I'm 5'9", so I'm fairly large framed, but she's massive, and yet she fit in this pool, and she fit in my body. And I knew energetically I was much, much bigger. And that's one of the first things that you do experience, is feeling yourself expand into a much bigger capacity energetically, where you just all of a sudden, like, even though this is your boundary of skin, you don't notice it, and you feel really, really big energetically. And I also noticed that I came out of the water, and I knew that she was looking through my eyes for the first time. So as my head came out of the water, and I pulled the water off my forehead and looked at the horizon there, where all the women were gathered and we were getting ready for ceremony, I was looking through her eyes, because it was multiple facets, like looking through crystal. And I was seeing it as if in a different way than I ever had before. And there was something inside me. I just knew I was looking through her eyes. So that's another experience you can have, where you feel this merge. Doesn't have to be something that happens in the water, especially depending on your lineage. I'm water dragon. So that experience of feeling like you're looking through their eyes, that's definitely something that will happen for most of you. And the other experience is starting to feel energetically just more aware, but also that, wow, I feel like I can feel my wings, or like some pain around my scapula, around my shoulder blades. That area right between your shoulder blades is your wing plates. And so to have the energetic wings getting stuck, trying to come out, I've talked about that with back pain and hip pain before, where that's where all my work with the dragons started, was actually finding them coming out of people energetically when doing energy work with people like on the table or the floor in front of me. So you might perceive the tail, you might perceive the wings, you might feel like your head has turned into a dragon head with a snout and the big nostrils and the horns and maybe tendrils. Everybody's experience will be subtly different based on your dragon's body shape. Whether you're serpentine, you might not have wings, but you might feel like your spine is coiling. I did have that experience where I was woken up in the night once, where my body was undulating, where our spines don't do a serpentine format very well. They can curve one way or the other, but I literally found my body, it was so strong of a pulse going through my body, trying to undulate like this along my spine, that it woke me up. I know that my dragon was working to loosen my body into that energy framework, and it was so strong that it woke me up, and I was like, what is happening here? I found myself wiggling in bed front to back, like laying on my back and feeling this ripple trying to go through my spine, waking up my serpentine aspect of my body form. So that was very interesting as well. So those really physical, tangible sensations of, wow, this is an energetic body, but I can feel it, like, whoa, there's my wings. Also really common is stepping into what feels like a state of bliss that is maybe a higher vibrational state than you've reached before. And with one or two of those things going on, like, oh, I do feel really, really beautiful. I feel really calm and peaceful, but at the same time, I feel myself expanding. And then you start noticing, you know, the wings or the horns growing, or whatever part really coming in around you. Some people experience the breastplate. All of those are what I would consider like first steps, like the normal progression of things. As I have gone further on my journey, I started noticing, and it went along with all the vibrational up-leveling that was happening, the continuous release of stuff, the continuous taking on of more vibration, feeling things shift in my life. But as I would continue to do that, it was like making more space for me to merge into my dragon and have my dragon really present. And I won't go through it now because it's one of the things I teach, but how to merge into that is you going into your dragon or your dragon coming into you, and both happening and getting to different stages of where that's comfortable. But it moves into a really massive level of heart expansion, where you start to notice that your heart is so much bigger than you imagine it could be. And that's because your dragon heart is, if you're a dragon, whether you're a dragon heart or a dragon rider, if you're a dragon lineage, you imagine the size of a heart in a dragon. Just the physical size alone when they were incarnate, massive, right? And energetically, I've met dragons that were as big as planets. So, like, that's a massive heart space, right? But it's also about the frequency, the bandwidth that they can hold, because they're perfectly unconditionally loving beings. They hold one of the highest octaves of frequency bandwidth of just that pure embrace in that backdrop of divinity that is really, really big. And so that heart expansion, we start moving into a merged space with that. Greater levels of trust, of clarity, of deep knowing. Your telepathic body starts developing, because that's characteristic to your dragon aspect. Your higher soul level self, it has characteristically more clarity, more knowing, full telepathic ability, full trust in what they're doing. And so as you merge with that, those become more and more your traits, your characteristic nature. And it's a sliding scale. It's a progressive expansion of that, because we have not been in that, and we have not trusted, and we have been separated or veiled off. And so getting those tidbits back, if you're paying attention, you start to notice, wow, you know, I have been acting in more trust of myself, and knowing like, yep, this is the path before me, and this is what I need to do. And that knowing that comes in of like, I shouldn't do that, or I need to do this. And that's part of that process of the merge. Because I am a reader, I'm an empath and a medium. One of the things that I did notice as well that might be helpful for you guys as insight to pay attention to is my reading space was always in my body field. Like I would close my eyes and go, and it was sort of like on my inner visual screen, as if I had a movie screen there, and feeling information flowing, particularly because I was claircognizant, just into this space here. And this is where all your clairs are, all your openings, literally through the 5th chakra. Even if you imagine your third eye is up here, the openings are through here. So when I would get information, it was all around this field. Well, as I continued to expand and merge into myself, into my full dragon, that started expanding, and I started realizing and noticing that I didn't need to go into an internal space anymore. I don't always close my eyes anymore as information starts flowing. And the first point I noticed was that it was about 3 feet. My reading space became about 3 feet around me, where I was still getting visuals, but it was like they were projected out here, and I didn't have to see them. I just knew they were there and what they looked like. And the information that went along with it was right there. And there was like all this information in the sphere. I had a greater capacity to hold a greater level of information and weave it together. And then that expanded to about 10 feet around me. And now I don't know if there's a barrier, so to speak, as much as it's just constantly present. And that's because of the development of my telepathic body. So I do notice that, where I am so much more clear on, I always joke in my classes because I know exactly who's about to raise their hand because they have something to share, because I feel their heart impulse that they want to share before, like right as they do. And so I just sort of watch and like, yeah, there's their hand coming up. That's it. And who's going to call on my phone? The phone's about to ring, or I'm not near my phone and I'll know like, oh, so-and-so just responded to my email or whatever. And I can go and check, and the email's there or the phone message is there. And that's part of that expansion as well. So that, and being more and more anchored in the heart space. It's a progression towards that. So Renee specifically asked the questions. Hopefully this will be insightful for her, but also for everybody, because we're all on that path to merge into ourselves. And it doesn't matter if you're a dragon or not. If you are moving into a merge with yourself, there are pieces that I shared that are going to be similar experiences as you move towards that. So hopefully that's helpful going into your weekend. I want to wish everybody a beautiful weekend. I will see you at some point next week. I saw a question posted today that I'll try and tackle maybe next week about the ley lines and the dragons being key keepers or keepers of the ley lines. And I need to look at the question again to get like real clear on what's being asked, but maybe we'll dive into that next week, because the ley lines are big. They're a big part of what we're doing, and a big part of the completion work moving forward as they get fully reactivated. That's been happening for years. There have been people working on the grids and the ley lines that are connected with the dragons. And so I think it's a very valid time to talk about that. All right. So wishing you guys a beautiful one. I'll see you sometime next week. Don't forget about discovery calls if you feel like you want to connect. And it's not a reading space, but we can get clarity on what's out for you, like what tools would be best for you, what's going on with your dragon journey. Is there anything insightful that I could sort of lead you towards to help you open up more? Those kinds of things. So we'll see you next time. Bye for now.